Next Best Comic with Dr. Lynn. Hi there. Welcome to Next Best Comic with Dr. Lynn. This is a program that showcases up-and-coming comedians. Please be advised that this show is for mature audiences only, due to potential coarse language, potential sexual content, and topics that may be deemed offensive by some of you. The goal of this program is to provide a platform for comics to show off their skills while growing a global base of fans and followers. This program involves unscripted content, ad-lib scenarios, impromptu skits, and loads of improv moments with comedians who are in the process of breaking into superstardom. With the guidance of Dr. Lynn Perrault, me, we will explore controversial human behaviors as seen through the eyes of a comic. Hi, I'm Dr. Lynn. I have a doctoral degree in applied social psychology, and I apply my human behavior expertise to leadership and business. I also have a very long background in improv comedy. I'm not going to name the years. It will age me tremendously. Audience, are you ready to experiment with a comedian's motivation and performance ability? Let's go. I'd like to welcome Michelle Mainwaring to the show. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. And hello, global audience.
Today we will talk about failure. And Michelle, I knew you were coming here today, and I specifically chose the topic of failure.
Oh, I'm so flattered. Thank you.
I knew that we'd be able to get an excellent discussion going on the topic, considering the different types of comedy that you've been doing over a lifetime career.
30 years.
There you go. So you have had so many experiences, from vagina monologues to murder mysteries to, oh gosh,
stand-up comedy for a little bit, yeah.
Tell me about stand-up comedy.
Oh, well, I was pretty young when I started in stand-up. I was still in my 20s, and there was a place in the States, Chaplains. There was Chaplains East and West, and they were doing this comedy college. So I took it, as a chance to figure out what that world might be like. And I tried my hand at stand-up, and I'll tell you, it was probably one of the most frightening things that I've ever done, because you're alone on stage. A lot of the comedy I do now, I still do the murder mystery comedy dinner theaters, but I've got a cast around me. And so talking about failure, if you're a stand-up, for me at least, on stage and you're not reaching your audience, or you have a small audience, the laughter from 7 is almost like an empty room, as opposed to the laughter from a full house of, even 100. But yeah, so when you do stand up and you don't do well and you die on stage, you die probably one of the loneliest deaths that I've ever experienced.
What and what's the loneliest death? What does it look like for our audience? Like,
for those people who have been on stage and know what I'm talking about, there's no escape. You're live in front of people, and you are left feeling alone. There's no way to get out of it if you haven't got the bits right, or maybe stage fright takes a hold of you. And the comedy college that I went to, I remember the one thing they said specifically was that comedy is ruthless. And so I struggled, as a compassionate person, in a sense. Can I be that ruthless? Does it have to be ruthless? And those were things I really struggled with comedy. And then to be, like I say, alone on stage and no escape. And the one time, I'd only died once on stage, thank God. And I didn't ever want to do it again. I never did stand up in that capacity after that moment, because it would just, it really threw me off kilter, because I'm not one person who is afraid to be on stage. I love it. It's what I live for. But I was thirsty, and I had dry mouth, and I was asking for water, and nobody would bring me water. So to say that I died the loneliest death, it was also the thirstiest. So yeah, so that was one time that I don't ever want to have to experience again. And
no more stand-up comedy for you.
Well, I have actually done some, but not in a stand-up club You know, that's not for me. You know, I would get to these venues, different clubs, and the comics are all at the bar and they're having a drink and, oh, here, have a drink. And I'm like, no, I don't drink. Well, I was kind of outcast and I
Mm.
was female. And, you know, this is what, 20 something, 25 years ago. There weren't a lot of female comics, really. You know, Leno had some good ones on, but they were few and far between. So there was that kind of, you know, loneliness as well. I was the only one that I saw in the clubs that was doing it. So it was life-changing experience. But like I say, I do some comedy bits in all my shows. If somebody needs, you know, 20, 45 minutes, I'm good for that with solid material. But improv is improv is the where it's
That's
at.
your sweet spot.
That's it, right? You know, you don't have to rehearse anything. You show up, you're in the moment, and some of the greatest moments happen right in those moments that are spontaneous, you know. And you could go to the same titled show every day, but it'd be different because there's a different audience, you know.
And you
So,
change one cast member and it's a whole different vibe, isn't it?
yeah, that's right. Change an accent, you know.
Mhm.
It's good to have a few of those in your pocket if you're doing what I do. And I love the challenge of an accent.
Now, what happens when you bomb in a situation with a group of people? So we're going away from the discussion of stand-up comedy, moving into
Hmm.
failure in improv
Okay,
comedy.
it's happened.
Now, what is one of the biggest bombs ever?
There was this show in Leamington, and for some reason, they weren't getting it. We weren't on our game. I don't know what it was. The dynamic wasn't working, and um, we just couldn't get it. And we got to the end of the show, and that for me is like, you know, that's my challenge. If there's one person in the audience who doesn't look like they're having a good time, I'll zero in because that's my mission. That's my job. I
Mhm.
want to make sure my audience has a great time. And I didn't feel that from this audience. And there was about 200 of them. So we're in our closing moments of the show where we usually wrap stuff up. And then my cast saw me pacing and there was like, what is it? And I'm like, I don't know. We've got to do something. And they said, what are you going to do, Michelle? And I said, I don't know, but I got to do something. And I put a lot of faith in my abilities at that moment. I walked out with no idea. We got a standing ovation by the end of it.
What'd you do? What
I
happened?
don't even know. I just went out and I was in the moment. And I couldn't tell you what was said. My husband a lot of times has to recap because I work so fast. And when you turn off your filter in your brain that says maybe you shouldn't say that, it's maybe not, you know, politically correct, right? And you have to be careful, right? Because there's a fine line there. But when you turn off the filter and you're thinking quickly, at least I can't recall all those spontaneous things. And my husband will say, you did this. And I'll be like, I did. Did I really do that? Oh, well, did they laugh? Yeah. So,
Phew.
yeah, that's it. That's all that matters.
So you had a chance at a redo.
I did, I guess.
Yeah, at a redo. And so this is the thing that separates some people from others, which is the response to failure.
Hmm.
Everyone fails at some point, and that's why I was so excited to talk about failure with someone like you, because how you respond to failure and how quickly you respond to it seems to be a very pivotal skill or a pivotal character strength, perhaps, in comics that
Oh,
make it very, very far.
yeah. You know, I have to kind of also link that in with actors because in failure is rejection. It's kind of hand in hand. And although you can't, as an actor, comic, you can't look at that failure as rejection and take it personally. Otherwise, you'll. That's what you know. You're saying is the point is one of my acting coaches said how noble a profession acting is because you're constantly faced with rejection. You knock on a door and it closes, but you move on to the next door and you
Mhm.
hold your head high and you say, maybe it wasn't my performance, I wasn't their type, right?
Mhm.
And so it's a matter of putting everything into its perspective and saying that one didn't work out, let's move on. But when you're in a live situation, you do the same thing is I'm not accepting this failure. You know, I'll pull out every trick I've got.
I refuse.
What we have here is a failure to communicate, but we won't for any longer. But yeah, so I'm pretty lucky though. I'm lucky in the sense that I'm working full time in a career that I really believe that I was meant to do, you know? It's pretty rare.
So, if we move into the segment that I call the 3 rules of failure, what would be your 3 rules?
To avoid it or to to achieve it?
To bounce from it?
To bounce
The
from it?
3 rules of failure, like how to deal with it. How
Oh,
to deal with it.
okay, so I've never thought about this before, and it's a great question. If I'm really looking at it, I would say, the first part is face it, look at it honestly, um, and accept it as this happened, and then commit to moving beyond it. So that would be rule number one. Uh,
Oh, whoa, that was like
that was
7
like seven,
things.
but I'm hoping that it's rule number one, subsection A, part one,
I
right?
get it. I gotta
So
I'm
that's
gonna get a pen here.
yeah,
Just gonna
you're gonna need more
just write
paper.
it down.
So yeah, and I think learn from it would be another rule, so you don't make the same mistakes. And three, if there is a three, or seven, if you like, uh, is
Number 13,
that's right.
subsection 10.
Yeah, don't let that failure define you. Because often we do, at the end of our shows, we collect all our ballots and we also say on our ballots, how'd you enjoy the show? So we're getting feedback.
Yes.
And if it's a place that offers food, how'd you enjoy the meal? Because that's important. You want to know. So you can see 75, had a great time, laughed till we cried. And it just takes the one, it wasn't my cup of tea, or really didn't care for the story. And that one you take and you think, oh my God, we must have sucked. Meanwhile, you got 75 that were, they stood up and give you a standing ovation, but it only takes that one. So don't let it define you.
So what would you do if I said, tell me about or show me the good, the bad, and the ugly of getting failure, um, uh, failure feedback after a show?
The good, the bad, and the ugly?
Whether it's during the show, like before the show, during the show, or after the show, the good, the bad, and the ugly of knowing that there was some sort of failure, whether it was a subjective one or an objective one, doesn't even matter.
Well, I guess the good is the ability to recognize it and not be so in your own space that you don't realize, at least for me, the thing is, it's all about the audience's enjoyment, right? It's not about look at me. It was when I was young. I didn't get it then, and I get it now, right? It's about what I can give to my audience. So the good part of recognizing that failure is, I guess, that you're not so in your own glory, that you're not sensitive to somebody else's enjoyment. The bad is obviously knowing that what you're giving, because when you're performing, you're giving of yourself, and what you're giving, somebody doesn't want to receive it. They're like this. I went into a show one time in somebody's basement, and it was like 15 people all sat with their arm crossed like this, right? And you got a sense they were there just, make me laugh. And so the elephant in the room was the closed body language. And I thought, if I don't address it, right, it's still the elephant in the room. So I opened with, well, I can tell by the body language that you're all open to receiving me. And each one uncrossed their arms. And we had a great show.
Awesome.
So I guess that the last thing is the ugly. The ugly, the ugly can be something as um, sad as somebody isn't enjoying themselves because they've been grieving. And I faced that, and that's a hard one.
You don't know what the audience members are going through
That's
in that
right.
time.
And do you want to know something? I'm not like a religious nut or anything, but I have a faith in there's something greater than me out there. And my little prayer, my wish before every show is that if anybody needs a healing through laughter, that whatever it is can work through me and my cast, and let those people receive it. And I'm always convicted that that's my life's work, because something always tells me in every audience that mission was accomplished. I had a lady chase me one time running down the hall at the Capitol Theater. And she's, Michelle, Michelle, Michelle. I'm like, what? She's like, I gotta say thank you. And I'm like, for what? And she looked at me, Lynn, and her eyes were so full of emotion. And she said, my mom died 2 weeks ago, and I didn't think I could ever laugh again. And I looked at her and we held each other and we wept, so the good, the ugly, and then the beautiful. Maybe you
That's
want to.
so that's so touching.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you know what? It means a lot to me.
Yeah.
So keeps me working.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Very cool.
Yeah.
Now, are there any cheats that can be used to avoid failure, or if failure is imminent, is there a cheat where you can avoid it? If a failure has just happened, is there a cheat to get back on track?
Yeah, I think there is. I got some standby stuff I keep in my pocket. Solid jokes that I've been saying forever and ever that I know are really going to lift a room, especially energy, and it involves an accent, right? And people love it. Yeah, so there's that. And I don't like to, if I don't have to, pull out my stock jokes, but I would call those a cheat. Sometimes shock humor. Um,
Like, for instance,
um, so let's look at Saturday Night Live. All right. They're on television, right? They don't use profanity, but they have, an adult content level, right? Some of the comedy clubs that I've been to, their shock humor, I find, takes place around jokes that are in the toilet, sexuality jokes and things like that. We don't do that, and I don't condemn any of, hey, whatever floats your boat. But sometimes
mhm.
your audience, that's what they want, and you have to kind of know. You know, so if you get a sense that, hey, we pulled out all the stops, the stock stuff isn't working, let's test out some shock humor. And we've used it before. I'm not,
As a team, because when you're on your
yes,
own, shock humor isn't something that you can use straight on your own when you've got this
team.
team
Yeah,
working
and
with you.
they kind of follow my lead. I kind of, draw the line, like I'll set the bar is where it is, and they're really good about knowing not to go over it. There's just certain topics that we just don't talk about because we don't think it's necessary.
Mhm.
And it's a hard one because sometimes something will slip out, eh? And when you're in that moment, you just kind of have to apologize after.
Mhm.
I'm sorry. We said the word vagina again, didn't we? We didn't mean to.
Yeah, I know it happens.
Right?
It
It's just a
happens.
word.
Then you feel like your credibility is thrown out the window and people eventually forgive you.
Well, they do, right? And I think even in the shock humor, most audiences are pretty smart and they can judge your intent. Like if I'm out there to be hurtful, they'll know it,
Mhm.
but I think they get a sense. And it's like if I'm doing a show where I always work with my husband. And if I'm, shamelessly flirting with a man and I've done some things to priests, I know I'm going to hell. I'll go
Oh,
down in a burning
what
ring
if
of fire,
what have
not
you
knowing
done?
they were priests.
You can't just say that and not go into
Right? Well,
detail. What,
okay.
like what?
So standing behind a priest, not knowing he was a reverend, right? And leaning over and parts of my body that shall rename in this area, kind of were behind him. And I said to him as I was leaning over, if I lean over anymore, you won't hear the rest of the show.
Oh gosh. Oh my goodness.
Well, it was hysterical. And then at the end of the show, he tells me he's a reverend.
Oh dear.
The whole room went silent. And there I stood and started singing, going down, down, down in a burning ring of fire. It was
Really?
the greatest moment. Yeah. So that's one I do remember. So,
Well, you have to have very quick reflexes, don't you?
yes, you do.
All right. So let's say you had to develop a superhero ability with every failure, every type of failure that you've experienced. Can you kind of cluster some failures as you reemerging out of the failure as a certain superhero versus another type of failure, kind of another type of superhero comes out? And I don't mean like Spider-Man,
Mhm.
Superman. I mean your own version of superhero where there's one particular strength or skill that happens to pop out. Like name it and explain to us, you know, where it comes out.
Where it comes out, that's interesting. Well, I know there's times if I could choose a superhero power in those moments of failure would be the power of invisibility. Just like a big cloaking device that got me right out of the scene, and I pretend it never happened. I'll be honest with you, I've been thinking about this a lot lately, and I would have to say my superhero that comes out of adversity and failure, and I feel it and it comes from my heraldry, is I feel like a Viking superhero. I do. I've got the staff and the metal bra, and I just want to roar, and I feel like that because what I did was conquer something. And I'm all about that. I was afraid of flying. I hated flying. And I I took a certificate that I had and I went and I flew a plane. I threw up all the way landing it, but I felt like at the end of it I had my metal bra on and my staff, oh, it was glorious. So yeah, that would be it. I would be like a Viking
As you're wiping
superhero.
off some vomit from your mouth.
Nailed it. Yeah.
At least I did it, people.
You wouldn't have any gum, would you? Yeah.
Maybe a little water.
Yeah. The thing is, the pilot was going to let me land the plane, but I was too busy hurling into a bag.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
it's so sexy.
I know.
Leaning over.
Yeah. Do you want to hold my hair back while I vomit? No, lady, just keep going. It's terrible.
I need both hands on the wheel.
It's funny that you fly it with your feet, funnily enough.
What?
Yeah, people think that you fly it with that, but you don't. You actually fly it with your feet. And you take off with the pedals, and you never touch that's for gliding and like adjusting the wing flap. It was very cool.
What sort of plane was it?
Oh, it was just a little one. I don't even know what it was.
I had a seaplane lesson years ago.
Maybe it was.
And in the seaplane, yeah, the guy wanted me to just cruise.
Yeah.
Using the Horizon thingamaboppers.
Right.
And I refused to
That's
take...
the technical term.
I absolutely
fly.
refuse to take the it's not even the wheel, like the handles.
Let's
whatever.
call it the helm, because then we'll look like we know what we're talking
helm.
about. And that's for a ship, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The cockpit. What is it?
Oh dear.
Yeah, never mind.
Vagina monologues.
Yes.
All right. Character. What is your go-to character? The character that you pull it out, or pull her or pull him out, because I know that you're great at male characters as well. Which one do you know usually always wins? Like, it's just, that's the winner, winner, chicken dinner. It gets it.
Okay, so it's a character called Tipsy, usually, or Anita Man. I've kind of crafted her after one of my favorite male comedic actors, Dudley Moore. So she's a British drunk, and she's a real quick go-to. And a lot of people think I'm loaded and British, which is, awesome. So I can pull her out whenever I like, and I love her. She's very cute. Watch. Kilroy was here. Oh, that cracks me up. Anyway, I love her. And the other one I love is the Scottish character. Because there's this great joke that I tell about 3 Scottish sisters, right? And people really like this Scottish accent. I don't know why, but they do. Sometimes I'm a split personality. No, you're not. Oh, shut up. You just wish you were me. So, yeah. I guess there's a fine line between sanity and comedy, right?
You know you're doing it, though. You put yourself into it, and you took yourself out, so I'm thinking you're pretty safe.
Yeah. I remember once doing that British drunk. I got hired to do a practical joke, and I walked in the room, 200 people. Hello, baby. Oh, my God, you're so beautiful. The next thing I know, I got 2 strapping Italians on either side of me trying to escort me out of the room. And I've got to stay in character. So I'm like, oh, what are you doing? You're so cute. Oh, isn't he big? And when they got me around the corner, I dropped the accent and sobered up and said, hey, guys, I appreciate your concern, but I was hired to be here. And I literally watched their brains trying. and it was like, if they were a robot, they would have shut down right there and completely, it was hysterical. So I love watching that.
Springs would have come out their ears.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
That was great.
you want to try something in one of your characters? We'll let
Sure.
whatever character come out.
All right.
The story that's never been told.
The story that's never been told.
The story that's never been told.
Okay.
Once upon a time, there was a deer that was hopping in the forest with its little wiggly tail.
And he came across a beautiful igloo that had a glowing fire within. And ever so curiously, he peeked into the igloo only to find
a giant ogre that was on fire. Now, this ogre that was on fire was trying to melt the wax that had been placed on him from the evil wax sorceress. And this evil wax sorceress
had stricken the town of Clemencoville with an entire wax wall around it so that no one could enter or exit. And when she decided that the ogre had melted enough, she set her wicked plan into motion.
Well, now that I have waxed the ogre, I believe it is time for me to dress everyone in the perfection of wax clothing in the style of
Victorian knights, said the ogre, who was now convinced that he was the wax wizardry's right-hand apprentice. And so he set forth, sooth, to build a wax knight armor that was impenetrable to everything except for fire.
And then came the dragon of wax meltage. And thine people were on their knees begging to be saved by the knight. Do save us, please.
I will try and save you, said the knight, who was just walking out of a Monty Python film. But first, he said, I must feed this dragon some pomegranates. And if I don't, he will devour me whole. And so he fed the dragon some pomegranates. But the dragon coughed as he ate the pomegranate, splurting out a huge ball of fire that melted the wall, and they all lived happily ever after, except for the melty witch Vixen, who was banished to Wallaceburg.
To live in a
hut
by the
Piggly Wiggly Mart.
The end.
Thank you for shopping.
At the Piggly Wiggly.
The story that's never been told.
Yes, the story that's never been told. And dealing with failure in many failures where Michelle and I haven't worked together very much at all.
Ever.
One time at a practice with Charmaine, I believe you walked in and we played a couple of games together in 2005, forever ago. Like 12 years ago.
12 years ago.
So, so just seeing how, if there's any amateur improv comedians out there, anyone wanting to get better with improv, just notice how many times we saved ourselves from huge embarrassment through the course of the story that has never been told.
Or will ever be told again.
Ever. Like, never. How about a song? Is there a song that you go to sometimes for your, when you feel like there's an imminent failure, or you feel that a particular scene has failed? Is there a song that you may go to, perhaps for shock value? I'm not sure how you'd use that.
Oh my gosh. So here's the thing about singing and me. I do have a few times where I have to sing on certain things like the Rum Runners tour. There's two, but they're done comedically. So I never put singing on my resume, and yet I love to do it. So in answer to your question, there's one I used to do. It's a Krista Berg song, Patricia the Stripper. And I would do it at karaoke clubs, but a cappella, right? It's such a fun song. You can't usually find the instrumental to it. So I would do sometimes if I had nothing else to pull out of anything, maybe do Patricia the Stripper. The other one that I've been enjoying, and we do it on the tour, is Madeline Kahn did it in Blazing Saddles, and we do a little snippet of it, the I'm Tired song. Do you know the one?
No, I don't, but please
Oh my gosh, it's great.
go
Okay.
ahead.
So she starts off standing at the bar like this with a feather.
A feather.
That's a feather. I know. And the music plays and she turns around and she says, "Here I stand, the goddess of desire. Set men on fire. I have this power. Morning, noon, and night, it's drink and dancing. Some quick romancing. And then a shower. Stage door Johnnies constantly surround me. They always hound me with one request. Who can satisfy their lustful habits? I'm not a rabbit. I need some and this is where I stand up in front of a man, and I stand like this, and I look down, and I say, "Hey, where'd he go?" So yeah, that's one of my fun things that I like to do.
All right, so this is one thing that you just pull out there whenever it is needed.
If the feeling overtakes me, yeah.
Is that often?
Yes, it is. It is often.
All right. So to recap, try to either remember what you already said or just invent. We're going to give you like 60 seconds to answer my questions as quickly as possible.
All right.
Okay?
All right.
All right. I'll make you look good though.
Oh, okay.
If you're stuck, I'll just move to the next one.
Could you make me look just a little thinner and younger? Because there's some of this going on.
Like squeezing.
Use the thin camera.
All right. We're going to hang on. We're going to hang on. We're going to hang on. And here we go. How do you cheat in your work?
I pull out stock jokes.
What are some of the ways that you fail with flair?
I recognize it and do everything I can and go over above and sometimes use shock humor.
What is your favorite cheat to use?
My Scottish joke.
How could you cheat a last-minute speaking surprise or a last-minute having to perform surprise?
I would use my stock jokes and try and find out as much as I could about somebody in the audience and pick on them relentlessly.
What's the easiest speaking cheat style for you?
The easiest speaking cheat style for me is to use an accent like the British drunk one because it's funny, always.
Excellent. That was 40 seconds.
What?
But it was well done.
Do I win a prize?
You do!
What is it? So far, it's not really impressing me.
Hi, guys.
Is it this mug?
It glasses.
I would rather have the mug. Thank you. Thank you for the mug.
Yes, the mug. Now, if you had if we went back to Sirius, so Sirius Michelle.
Okay.
Sirius Michelle, who's also a mother, may I?
Let me put my serious face on. Yes, I am a mother.
Yes. If you had any advice to give to your son and to other mothers with sons, what would that advice be?
To sons.
Related to failure. And dealing with failure.
Never give up. Never lose hope. See beyond the failure onto the horizon of success. And always honor your mother and buy her lovely gifts when you're wealthy and put her in a nice retirement home. That would be my advice, to look beyond, in all seriousness.
Words of wisdom.
Thank you.
Yes.
It's not something I'm known for. Yes, so yes, I think seriously though, that would be it. Look beyond the failure. And, it's it's kind of comparable to that saying, if the sun isn't shining and you're feeling blue, just know that behind those clouds, the sun is still there, and success is still there. That failure should never define you.
What have you told people in the past, or maybe advice that you've given them when you see that they want to embark in a profession similar to yours, in improv comedy, or perhaps going into musical theater, writing plays,
Mm.
acting in plays, and you see that they're insecure or perhaps they don't have that confidence yet, what advice would you give them in order to give them that extra oomph that you can sense they really need in the moment?
I think depending on each individual, if it was somebody, that was lacking some motivation or maybe some skills, I would encourage them to seek out coaches, comedy coaches, acting coaches, get experience, and never let fear stop you from doing something that you want to do. And that kind of goes with anything in their lives, not just performing. When you let fear inhibit you, then you're going to miss a lot, right? So I would encourage them to do that and to face failure head on and ask themselves, what can I gain from this? Because that's a big one. I didn't find it till later in my life. I thought I wanted to be famous. Now I know this is the big one that I would tell them. I know that I'm doing what I'm meant to do. I do what I love. And if you don't love what you do in any form of work, especially this one, if you don't love what you do, then find something that you do love and do it, because people know when you're real. They know when you're living your dream. They see it. They see that passion, and that's something that needs to have its own wings. And if you can't give your passion its wings, then you'll never fly. And it's important, when you hit like half 100 like me, you don't have a whole lot of time left. So it's really important that you do stretch out your wings. My first marriage, my husband wanted me to be his wife, who was this I don't want to, he was a good man, but he wanted me to be a shopkeeper's wife, and my wings were clipped. And now my husband, my second husband, encourages me, and so now that I have no cage and my wings aren't clipped anymore, it's a beautiful life. So that's some sage advice that I hope anybody looking for something would really take to heart.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Thanks for that.
yeah.
On the practical side of things, if someone is just starting out or someone's been is very very passionate and they are doing what they love and they're having trouble making a living of it, do you have any tips or tricks for them beyond just marrying a rich man who will not clip their wings? Do you have any advice for them in general, not necessarily specifically, not geographically bound, just in general, no matter where they are in the world?
Yeah. You know what? That old saying, ask and you shall receive it. Look for it. It's out there. Don't think it's going to come to you. It's not. Also, I truly believe in when you give, it comes back. So do some charity shows. We do one a year. We just quietly don't charge, and we help raise money for our community. And I know it comes back. I get a booking, knock on wood, every show. So work in your community, get yourself known for being a person that people can count on. Um, and it'll come. It'll come if you put yourself out there, and it just requires effort and goodwill sometimes.
Yeah, so just keep on doing it.
Keep on doing it, and audition for everything. You're not going to get everything. Apply for everything. Get a good marketing package. Get some good headshots. I've seen people do stuff where they hand me a headshot and it's from like 20 years ago,
Mm.
So you have to invest in yourself too, and you're worth it, right? You're the product you're trying to sell. So the better you can make yourself come across professionally, it's worth that effort.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they're looking for an example of what a professional portfolio, because I think we're talking about a portfolio, is that it? Or a media
You know
package
what?
or,
Yeah, media package. Personally, for like an actress, maybe like a CV, their bios and all that, resumes.
or is there a place online where people can go and get examples so that they can mimic, not plagiarize in
Right.
any way, but mimic the outline and the style and the elements that are necessary to include?
I think so. I don't. I have never had to utilize them. But, all that investment again into your career, it may require purchasing, something, and if it's a few bucks, then spend it. But I think, sure, if you Googled, just don't Google yourself too much. I hear you can go blind. But if you Google resumes, professional actors, you'll get examples that come up. So, but if you have a good agent too, they'll tell you what you need. They'll tell you what kind of headshot, and it's funny because all agents are different. I had this really close headshot, and one agent loved it, and then the next one said, "You're gonna have to get rid of this. This is no good. What are you so close up for? Who did this? It's terrible." She didn't even have that accent. I just gave it to her. But yeah, so
So do you believe having agents really does help? Because some people
oh
are in the
yeah.
process of deciding because they're earlier on in their careers and
You
they're
know what,
deciding.
love? It depends on what you want to do. If you want to work the circuits, right, and you want to audition for film, yeah, get an agent. It's a great investment. A good agent shouldn't really, from what I hear, you shouldn't have to pay a lot. You get the work and then you give them their commissions. But yeah, it's certainly getting a good photographer is a good investment, and we've got so many in our area, um, you know, that they're so talented. But all that really, really does pay off, and they will find you more work because they've got leads,
Mm,
into jobs that you couldn't even get in the door to a lot of them.
mhm.
So, like, it depends on what you want to do. For me, it's not something I'm interested in. I'm better experienced live. That's my philosophy. So, come see a live show, and you'll get more than you ever would on film.
Mhm.
So,
Do you have film clips or clips of your some of your shows online? And do they do you justice?
no. I hate them. Oh my God, I hate them. It's not the clips, it's not the work, it's me on film, like I don't like to watch myself on film. I don't transpose well on
Mm.
film. And so yeah, there probably is. There's like a couple things that I've done that you could search and whatever. Um, I don't think they're do me any favors, really. Not well, I mean, they're not calling me anyways and offering me jobs and big films, so but that's okay 'cause, it's like I say, it's not something I wanna do. I don't want a giant screen with my face on it. It would horrify me. Put it on
A
a horror
giant
movie.
billboard. Big
Right,
giant
yeah.
billboard with a
No.
super close up of
Yeah,
Michelle's
yeah, right.
face.
Yeah, just make sure you get all those extra facial hairs that are coming in now. That'd be nice. So, yeah.
Michelle, thank you so much for
Oh,
joining us today. Really appreciate
thanks for
the
having
time that you
me.
took to be with us. If you haven't had a chance yet, go ahead to our Facebook page, Next Best Comic, and click like. Go ahead and join us. Also, you can go to nextbestcomic.com, and that will give you access to all sorts of footage and stories. And also, I want to make sure that you send us some feedback about today's shows, today's elements that we talked about. For instance, any of the advice that Michelle gave us today. If you have some advice that has worked for you and various things that you've tried that worked very well for you consistently, please send us all that information because we have a lot of people going to that site who could benefit from all the suggestions, feedback, and information that you're sending. So do stay in touch with you, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to Next Best Comic with Dr. Lynn.